Memphis Police Department administrative investigation is over. 5 Memphis police officers identified, fired, and charged. Tonight, we get our first look at the officers police say involved in that confrontation with 29-year-old Tyre Nichols. All of this coming after at least one protest today. Nichols supporters awaiting video of the incident, calling for its release now, not later, as promised by city officials. Tonight, Fox 13 has you covered from insights from the head of the NAACP Memphis chapter in studio to also in studio, a longtime law enforcement supervisor shedding light on what's possibly going on behind the scenes.
We're gonna fight. Like what they did to my brother, they might as well kill us all.
As the Mid-South prepares for the release of video showing exactly what happened the day of the confrontation, we're ensuring you're informed of the facts of what could be a monumental case, the Mid-South right at the center of it.
Release the dead! Release the dead!
Fox 13 News at 9 is next.
Fox 13 News at 9 starts now with breaking news.
And we begin at 9 with that breaking news tonight. We now know the names of faces of the 5 officers who Memphis police say were involved in the death of Tyre Nichols. Those 5 officers have now been fired. Good evening. Thanks for staying up with us tonight. I'm Daniel Wilkerson. Darcy Thomas and Daryl Green have the night off. Memphis Police releasing exactly why these 5 officers were fired. Let's get right to Fox 13's Kayla Solomon, who joins us live now. Kayla, before we get to those officers, we see some barricades behind you.
Daniel, the barricades aren't quite out here yet, but take a look at the gate around the City Hall entrance. Now, as someone who's out here on a weekly basis, it's always gated because of the construction, but now there's gates leading all the way up to the entrance. You can see this part can close so that no one could get in. I am told from one of my sources here at City Hall that there were barricades brought into the garage earlier. That way, if they need to be brought out quickly, they can. Of course, this could be in response to the latest in the Tyre Nichols death investigation. The newest, the last 2 hours is that these 5 officers their names and faces were released. These are their names. They are Officers Tadarius Bean, Officer Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr. and Justin Smith. The violations, according to the city, are the
This is an opinion you can trust.
excessive force, the duty to intervene, and the duty to render aid. Now, I spoke to Representative Antonio Parkinson just minutes after the announcement. He was one of a number of state leaders who represent Memphis who got a text this afternoon calling for a last-minute Zoom meeting with the city, and he says that this was to make sure they were all on the same page with the latest on the Nichols investigation. He says these arrests are just one piece of the puzzle.
I think it's very important that we keep the family in mind, and that they know that our heartfelt sympathy is going out to them, and we need as elected officials to make sure that justice is served in whichever manner it's supposed to be served, and that it's treated fairly.
So now the big question, of course, is when will that body cam footage be released? We were told earlier this week that we can expect to see it released next week after the family and attorney Ben Crump have viewed it privately. And we now know as of this afternoon that attorney Crump says he will be in town on Monday with the family to have a press conference at 1 p.m. downtown. Coming up at 9:30, I'll tell you more of what we can expect to see in the coming days and also what this could mean next. Daniel?
Kayla, it's a case that will no doubt have a lot of eyes on it. Kayla Solomon starting our coverage off at 9. Kayla, thanks. Tonight, we are taking a deeper dive into the officers involved in this case. We begin with Officer Tadarius Bean. He has been on the job not even 3 years. He was hired in August of 2020. The next officer terminated is Officer Demetrius Haley. He was also hired in August of 2020. The third officer is Officer Emmett Martin III. He has been on the job a little longer.
This is an opinion you can trust.
The third officer is Officer Emmett Martin III. He has been on the job a little longer. He was hired back in March of 2018. Then there is Officer Desmond Mills. He has been on the job for 6 years. He was hired in March of 2017. The last officer terminated is Justin Smith. He was hired back in March of 2018. All of these men who you see on your screen have been fired by the Memphis Police Department due to their involvement in the arrest that led to the death of Tyre Nichols 2 weeks ago. Now comes calls to see the video.
Release the boy! Release the boy! Release the boy!
As Kayla mentioned, the family of Tyre Nichols is set to see body cam footage this coming Monday. A press conference has been set up with the family and their lawyer, Ben Crump. Attorney Ben Crump says the Nichols family will speak publicly Monday afternoon after they see Memphis Police video of Tyre Nichols' confrontation with Memphis Police. Now, the news of the officers being fired has us asking, of course, a lot of questions about the investigation that led to the firings. For some time, there have been a lot of questions in this case. Of course, I am joined here in studio by Mike Collins. Mike, you worked in law enforcement for some 25 years. You worked as a supervisor. Tell me, what goes into the firing of a police officer?
Well, I want to first offer my condolence to the Nichols family before I begin. And to begin an investigation such as this, where it culminated into death, of course, there's extensive investigation that begins with the actions of the police officers that are involved. Of course, at the scene, they're going to collect evidence, everything that's pertinent to the investigation in and of itself. And then the investigation part start. The TBI normally handles situations such as this. It begins with them, and of course, once again, they're collecting evidence, taking statements from witnesses, and if there's a video or anything like that, they will utilize that as part of their investigation.
Yeah, speaking of the video, so many have wondered why there would be so much time in between the time that video was released. Why do you think they are taking this time?
Well, it's very important that you do not compromise the integrity of the investigation by releasing that video, because one is one of the most critical parts of the investigation. So, and being honest, this is a very quick investigation by just looking at the time that it took the TBI and other investigators to get to this point where they're ready to release the video. So I think it's actually in a very good timely manner.
Yeah, and a lot of people have wondered this. In the age of all of these cameras, everybody has a camera. We have street cameras. What would lead, and of course these officers are they're innocent until proven guilty.
Correct.
But just in a generalized way, what would lead officers to act in this manner as the city has said they acted?
Well, one is still beyond me why a person would act in this particular manner when exactly what you just said. Not only do the officers have camera capability, this technology, but the public does too. And it is beyond any type of explanation as to why an officer will act in this particular behavior when they know the camera is running.
And that leads me to another question. Many have said to me, you know, you have 5 officers
Yes.
who were involved here. Why isn't there perhaps one officer who would say, are we going too far? Now, we want to emphasize, I'm asking these questions in general because these officers, as I said, are innocent until proven guilty. But we see the video. Is it the camaraderie that police have amongst each other?
Well, that's part of it. It's a particular police culture where you do have that camaraderie where you are engaged in policing. Of course, I'm assume that every officer, when they come on duty, their goal is to do a good job. Now, when they get to the point where you're using force, excessive force, and other actions that are very questionable, I think and it's incumbent upon other officers to bring that person down and bring. If someone has to use logic, and that's one of the most important things. And I get it. You want to do the job, but that's not part of doing a very effective job if it's going to result in someone's death, and especially in a situation like this. This is just so unfortunate, and especially in a situation like this. This is just so unfortunate, and one, it gives police officers a black eye and a bad reputation, and that's one of the things that everyone in law enforcement is trying to resist. This particular image. This is an ugly image, and it's nothing I could say that's going to make this look any better. But back to your question, the environment. I get it that they want to do aggressive policing, proactive policing, and this is what they are trying to do. However, when they get to the point where you're using force, and then I think the biggest question is, well, what's the justification of using that force that would end in death? And that's at the end of this particular investigation. What was the justification for using deadly force? Because that's exactly what happened at the end of this particular incident.
Mike Collins, our security law enforcement analyst. I'm sure that we will be coming to you in the days to come. 25 years in the field. We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
Tonight, we are getting responses from the Memphis Police Association and the lawyer representing the family of Tyre Nichols. They are all responding to the news of the 5 officers being fired. Fox 13's Lakia Scott joins us live from the Breaking News Center. Lakia, what did the Police Association have to say?
Yes, Danielle, the Memphis Police Association released a statement tonight, and it reads, quote, due to the ongoing criminal investigation, the Memphis Police Association will not comment on the termination of officers in the Tyre Nichols case. The citizens of Memphis, and more importantly, the family of Mr. Nichols, deserve to know the complete account of the events leading up to his death and what may have contributed to it. And tonight we have also heard from the family's attorney, being Crump and Antonio Romanucci, are responding responding tonight, saying we join Tyre's family in supporting the department's decision to terminate the 5 officers who brutalized him, ultimately causing his death. This is the first step towards achieving justice for Tyre and his family. They must also be held accountable for robbing this man of his life and his son of a father. In the coming days, we will review the video footage from this violent attack, providing the family and community more clarity into what led to the loss of this young man, father, and son. We will continue to demand transparency and accountability in this case and will not stop until we achieve full justice for Tyre and his family. Now, we've also heard from the state senator, Ramesh Akbari, on those firings. She released a statement on the firings saying it's no secret Memphis police officers have a difficult job to do, but there is no excuse for police brutality against our citizens. I am thankful Mayor Strickland and Chief Davis took decisive to make sure justice prevails. The only way forward, keeping our citizens safe, is to work together to build relationships and support reform that stops police brutality. Folks, we have work to do to bridge divides and heal the wounds in our community. It's the hard work that must be done. I am praying for Tyre Nichols and his family, as well as our community, in hopes that this does not happen again, end quote. Now, coming up at 10, we're getting so many responses and so much reaction from the community. We'll have more of that coming up. Daniel.
That's Lakia Scott for us in our breaking news center. Lakia, thanks. Now, once again, 5 Memphis police officers have now been fired. Memphis police say their involvement in the death of Tyre Nichols is the cause for their termination. Now, Nichols was involved in what Memphis police say was a confrontation with police on Saturday, January 7th. He died 3 days later. On January 10th in the hospital. Protests erupted this past weekend. Now tonight, we've learned the 5 officers have been fired, as I stated. On Monday, we expect the family to see the body cam footage. We have also posted on our website on Fox13Memphis.com more information concerning this story. You can go there for the latest breaking details. Now, coming up in our next half hour, what Memphis police also said about these officers' actions and their possible involvement with this. Will be the death, of course, of Tyre Nichols. He died January the 10th, 3 days after what Memphis police are calling a confrontation with officers during a traffic stop in Hickory Hill. Now, Mayor Jim Strickland said the police video of the Nichols case will only be released after that process is completed and the family has a chance to see it. He says there's a meeting with the family and their attorney, Ben Crump, early next week. Of course, we will have more on this breaking news coming up tonight at 9 and 10. But just to repeat, breaking news just into our newsroom. The 5 officers, you see them on your screen there, associated with the Tyre Nichols arrest, have been fired by the city of Memphis, and they have been charged. Just to go over their charges, again, we understand that those charges include that they violated multiple department policies, including excessive force, use of force, duty to intervene, duty to render aid. Each have been terminated. You know that the Memphis Police Department, the city of Memphis, calling this egregious in nature. Now, as you know, we have been waiting on video of the incident. We're told by the city of Memphis that video will be released early next week when the officers or when the family has a chance to view that video. Now, just to go over the officers again that have been terminated, we also have their hire dates. One officer is Officer Tadarius Bean. According to the release, he was hired August 20. 2020. There was Officer Demetrius Haley, hire date of August 2020. Officer Emmett